big box store actually opened in 2004 in Hastings. So that was the first Mitre 10 Mega in New Zealand to have opened. I'd had the fortune to travel overseas in the early 2000s to see what was happening in terms of the home improvement market internationally. And it became pretty obvious that the days of the smaller the hardware store, high street type store, were numbered, that internationally the business was expanding from hardware and homewares into this home improvement concept, which was a combination of both retail business and trade business, and then of course also adding on things like garden centres and drive-through trade facilities. So that was what the international model was.
This is the Ryan Marketing Show, and you're listening to episode 96 of 100. Today on the show, I have Graeme Ricketts from Mitre 10 Mega in Hastings, and Napier, and Auckland and Christchurch and all over the place. But we're based here in Hastings at the HQ where the head office is. Great to have you on the show, Graeme.
Pleasure.
So let's get stuck in. I guess Mitre 10 Mega is a very well-known brand in New Zealand. You know, there's a huge amount of not only awareness but affinity for the brand, because anyone who owns their own home and wants to improve on it, usually the first port of call is doing a weekend trip down to Mitre 10. Was that always the case? And if it wasn't, what was the origins of Mitre 10 that then eventually evolved into this DIY culture that you're such a big part of in New Zealand?
Well, Mitre 10 originated in Australia back in 1959. The name Mitre 10 came from the fact that there was a meeting held at the Mitre Tavern in Melbourne of some independent hardware retailers who decided that they wanted to get together and form a buying and promotion group. So that's how Mitre 10 started. The concept came first to New Zealand in 1974, and as local independent hardware operators with our family business of Scott and Ricketts, we joined Mitre 10 in 1975.
Okay, so that would have been a big decision back then to go into a buying group that was separate from just running your own family-owned shop?
I think at the time it was the logical next step, that there was a realisation from my parents that to survive as independent hardware retailers in the future was going to be more difficult. Even at that stage, there was a degree of consumerism starting to happen, and I think it was important for us to be able to grow our business, and to do that, we needed the best possible buying opportunity. And of course, at that stage, promotion and marketing was also becoming incredibly important. So no, it was a considered choice, but it was a very worthwhile, obviously.
So back then, that would have been your parents, Derek and Audrey, that would have made that decision.
Correct. They started in business in 1961 in a small store in Tauranga. And through the early and mid-60s, they moved premises 3 or 4 times and eventually settled on a premises in the middle of the Tauranga shopping centre. And we continued there until 2006.
And so you're obviously from the Ricketts side of the family, being Graeme Ricketts. Where did the Scott part come into it, the Scott and Ricketts?
Well, Bert Scott had a paint and glazing store in Taradale in the late 50s, and Dad got to meet him. Dad was a travelling salesman at the time, and he got to meet Bert Scott in the course of his call cycle, and they got talking about the possibility of forming a partnership and joining together to run a business. And long story short, that's what happened in 1961. They went into partnership together in this paint and glazing business. The focus then moved from glazing more into hardware as people started to ask for hardware and homewares type items. So it was an evolution as the business moved from glazing particularly into homeware and hardware.
Now, looking back from where we are now, it's relatively easy to say, oh, well, the steps you took and the decisions you made were the right ones. But I'm sure back then, making some of those decisions was like a big leap into the unknown. Talk me through one of those decisions where you decided to do something to change the business or expand, where the results weren't necessarily guaranteed.
Over the years, the business has expanded a number of times. For me personally, one of the vivid memories is in 1981 when we opened a second store in Dickens Street in Napier. That was a big leap of faith to move to a second premises, to have to stock it. So obviously the capital investment went up considerably from what it had been. Plus there was also the operational aspects to deal with. And it was, at the time, the market was reasonably buoyant, but it was looking as if it was going to slow down a bit. But regardless, we went ahead and the store was a huge success.
Okay. So that's a kind of a bit of a challenge because now you've got these two stores, you've got to stock two stores, you've got two sets of inventory, two sets of people to employ, and yet the area you're servicing is only 20, 30 minutes away from each other. How did you go about then doing the marketing for each of those stores in the early days?
Oh, the business was marketed as two stores, as a Napier-wide operation, giving people the opportunity to take advantage of the Mitre 10 offer in effectively geographically the opposite ends of Napier City. So, position-wise, the stores were in a great place. It enabled people to get to one store or the other relatively easily.
And which store did you end up? Did you run one of them or did you run both of them?
Yeah, I wound up, or initially started running our Napier store in Dickens Street. I joined the business the year before in 1980. So Dad posted that as a challenge for me to get in there and make it work.
Did he set you up for success, or was this a...
Yeah, no, we got on well together, and he set me up for success. And then in 82, my brother Stephen came and joined the business, and he joined with Dad in the Taradale store, and the two of them ran the Taradale store. Although, having said that, the whole business was run conjointly.
What was your earliest memories of the stores? Was it when you started to run one of the businesses, or was it prior to that when your dad was running it?
Oh, no, as kids, Stephen and I were always involved in the business. I mean, it was a part of the family. We always knew what was going on. It was always talked about around the dinner table. Early memories of things like we used to pack bags of nails and bags of plaster of Paris in the garage at home, or we would pack terps and methylated spirits into bottles at the store, in the dangerous goods store. Probably my earliest memory is Stephen and I were in the store one Christmas Eve in Taradale when it was still a very small store, and the store had two entrances, one off the main street and one off the car park at the back. And later on, and at that stage, the store was open till 9 o'clock on Christmas Eve. And I remember that Stephen and I sellotaped up the back door because we actually wanted Mum and Dad to get the hell out of the place so we could get home for Christmas.
Because that is one of the challenges, isn't it? Is that unless you come from a family that owns a business, it's not immediately obvious how much work actually goes into running a business and keeping it going and making sure everyone's paid and stock levels are full, particularly around that Christmas period. Did you ever think to yourself, actually, I don't want to run a business, I want to do something completely separate? No,
not at all. I mean, I had plenty of opportunity to go and do something different, but the retail always fascinated me. I did marketing by training, and I have an affinity with people, and so it always it was just a natural progression for me to get into something where I was dealing with other people, and retail fits the bill.
Okay, so you've now made a success, certainly, of Dickens Street and that place. What then did you want to do to take your marketing experience and what you learnt in that shop that your dad had given you as a challenge to then go, right, guys, this is where I think we can take Scott and Ricketts and go bigger than just the two stores?
I think the next step for the business after that was to launch into the Hastings market. At the time, we thought having a store in Napier, one in Taradale, one in Hastings and one in Havelock North would be the ultimate, and that was the goal that we were aiming for. So in 1986, we took over the business of the existing Mitre 10 operator in Hastings, who was running a store in Carrama Road and another one in Hiratonga Street. So we went from 2 stores to 4 stores, as I say, in the mid-1980s. That, for us, was an enormous challenge because we were moving into a new market again. There are differences in the markets between Napier and Hastings. It is, or it was around the time there was a lot of disruption in the economy, particularly in the Hastings market in terms of freezing work, rationalisation and all those things. So the market was changing, but it was also a huge opportunity for us to launch or progress the Mitre 10 brand in the Hastings market. So we ran those 2 stores there for a number of years in Hastings, and then in the early 90s had the opportunity to acquire a timber and hardware business in Havelock North. So we were then able to realise the ultimate goal, which was to operate in each of the 4 sectors in Napier, Hastings, Taradale and Havelock North.
Right, so this wasn't just a strategy to make sure you had your premises in the right locations, but also to expand into the trade and the building supplies so you could solve more of the problem for the customer?
Yeah, absolutely. It was an opportunity for us to understand that timber and building supplies market, to start dealing with tradespeople, whilst in the Hawke's Bay, as the local Mitre 10 operators, our focus had been around retail and consumable type product. The Mitre 10 brand nationally had some strong trade affiliations, and a number of the stores were doing significant business with the trade market. So for us, it was a logical next step to get into that market and to grow our market and deal with a different sector.
Right, so it was actually a gap in the offering, at least in the Hawke's Bay market, then you fulfilled, putting that into the product offering. Now, around that same time, you moved in the 90s into a different type of retailing style that included the building and supply side, and that is the big box format. How did you know that big box was going to work in Hawke's Bay and in New Zealand? Had you seen it overseas, or what caused that shift in how people buy from the small retail places on the high street to these big box with large car parking areas?
Well, our big box store actually opened in 2004 in Hastings, so that was the first Mitre 10 Mega in New Zealand to have opened. I'd had the fortune to travel overseas in the early 2000s to see what was happening in terms of the home improvement market internationally, and it became pretty obvious that the days of the smaller the hardware store, high street type store, were numbered, that internationally the business was expanding from hardware and homewares into this home improvement concept, which was a combination of both retail business and trade business, and then of course also adding on things like garden centres and drive-through trade facilities. So that was what the international model was. The other factor for us at the time, or for the wider Mitre 10 group as well, was the fact that Bunnings was moving into the New Zealand market. They had a big box program in Australia, but they were starting to make inroads into the New Zealand market. So we were forced to make a decision that we either needed to remain as we were in the hardware, homeware, smaller store, or we needed to go head to head in a big box environment. And after a lot of research and a lot of soul searching and a lot of chats to the bank, we managed to put together a proposal which we were very pleased with, and saw us, as I say, launch the first Mega in New Zealand in Hastings in 2004.
Now, that was on the old Leopard Brewery site.
Correct.
That must have been a challenging time to actually want to know you have to do that, or want to commit to it, because you would have had all of your locations set up, own some of that land and buildings, know that you've got the people that work there and everything's fully stocked, to then uproot all of that, shift it to one location. There must have been a lot of challenges around, well, how are we going to do this new big box? Which store do we shift across first? Do we do them all at once or one at a time?
Well, it seemed to us that the Hastings Havelock market is able to be serviced by a single offer. Havelock North is not that far away in terms of drive time, only about 4 or 5 minutes it was only about 4 or 5 minutes drive time from our Havelock North store to the new site for the Mega in Hastings. So it seemed to us that was not too much of an inconvenience for the consumer, given that we were then going to be able to offer a substantially improved range of products. The whole environment was going to be significantly improved on what we'd had before. We'd have a lot more expertise, we'd have a lot more product range, we'd be able to go into a whole lot of new categories. So it seemed to us that the benefits were going to outweigh the disadvantages, but it was a bit of a leap of faith in closing down, particularly the Havelock North store, and moving it to Hastings. We did get some criticism at the time, but the stories worked out very well in the long term, and we're absolutely delighted with the decision we made.
Now, the format of the Hastings and Napier store in particular, there's a huge range. It's not something where you think, oh, I'll go to Mitre 10, but I wonder if they'll have this. You've got such a substantial, diversified range of not just, what can I buy for DIY, but for the home and garden side as well. What type of experience are you going for when someone walks in the door? What do you want them to experience in terms of the whole Mitre 10 Mega store?
There's a couple of key factors. One is certainly in stock and availability of product, and we've got about 35,000 active
Wow.
stock items in the store at any one time. So, and we want to be in stock of all of those items all the time. We obviously have access to considerably more product than that through a special order program and extended ranges, which the team can access. So having the stock there is incredibly important to us. The other really important aspect is the whole customer experience. So when a customer comes into the store, our team are engaging with them, that the customer feels engaged, they feel looked after, feel as if they can get the advice, and we've got people there with the knowledge they need to help them with whatever it is they're doing.
I've certainly had that, experienced that firsthand. And there's almost, I know if I need help, I just look upwards as if I'm lost, and somewhere someone will appear out of nowhere wearing the black and orange and, answer the question that I didn't really know that I needed to ask. So I think that's half the challenge is, how do you find what you're looking for when you don't actually know exactly what it is?
We've got we make a huge investment in training and in helping our team with understanding the concepts around selling, what they need to be looking for, understanding consumer body language, and so on, and so exactly how to deal with any particular customer. Also, the product knowledge is an incredibly important part for us too, to make sure that we've got people that are adequately skilled. Basically, our philosophy in terms of the team is to have a team member base which reflects our customer base. So we've got a roughly similar number of males and females and ages, reflecting exactly what our customer makeup is.
That's great, because then internally you'll get people sharing what they believe should be happening in the store, which comes from all sorts of different points of views and backgrounds.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And the team work really well together as a team. So, if anybody's struggling, that there's always somebody there to assist them to deal with the issues. So, yeah, that's an incredibly important part of it.
Now, how does that then translate to how people are doing a lot of their purchasing now through e-commerce and discovering products through social media or what their friends or family are using, when so much of what you provide, it really is you have to touch it or feel it or see if it's going to fit before you can buy it. How does e-commerce fit into the overall Mitre 10 mega retailing framework?
The benefits at the moment are around education. So people are turning to the web for information to find out about product. We're finding a lot of research has been done before people even enter the store. A lot of the product we sell, though, does have a specialist component to it. I mean, yes, we do have some consumer type products, but generally people will want affirmation as to what they've seen online. They'll also often want help with deciding which is the best option, which is obviously something that's not available on the web, or certainly not to determine what the best option is for the individual. So the in-store experience is an incredibly important part of the people's shopping and spending and their behaviour in terms of buying product from us. But certainly the more consumable items, we're seeing more and more activity online. We do have the ability to transact online, so people can either purchase online and have it delivered to their homes, or they can call into store and collect it from the store. And we're finding that as a more favoured option, because of course a lot of people are out during the day, and having a courier turn up's not always the most convenient solution.
I think I've seen one of your videos online where I'm not sure if it's a competition or a campaign around make over your flat, and you've gone into these kids' flats and made over like their outdoor area, their garden, and then put an outdoor cinema there, and it's got 25,000 views in just under a week. So I think you're onto certainly a category leader, not just in the how-to part, but also the inspiration part. Like, I was watching the video going, maybe I could create an outdoor cinema out the back. It didn't look that hard.
Yeah. We got an incredibly talented marketing team at our Mitre 10 Support Centre in Auckland, and they have a huge focus around education and knowledge and information, and there's an enormous number of different videos being produced over the last 2 years around helping people with specific products and specific projects or individual projects, but also around inspiration. Recently there's been some filming done with George Clark from the Amazing Spaces, and there's another series of that being shot just at the moment. They've also done a project with Eric Murray and his wife, who built a home in Cambridge, and they went through the whole build process right from woe to go, and that particular series gives people a great understanding of what's involved in building, right from the time you acquire a section till the time you move in.
Last year, Eric's parents were down visiting my mum because they know each other. We grew up together,
right?
And I think they did mention something around they had a project coming up, so that now makes sense that was the project building the house.
Yeah, and there's a lot of useful information in there around things like building consents and working with architects and designers, and just the whole process of how to build a house.
Which is a big topic at the moment, affording a house, being able to purchase a house. You must have seen a huge amount, a surge around people maybe not moving, shifting house, but renovating the house they're in. Does that play into kind of helping people understand how they can do that and what's available to be able to make their home better than what it currently is?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are two distinctly different sectors of the market. There's the renovation market, and there's the new build market. The renovation market, sometimes it's relatively minor projects, landscaping, backyard type stuff, or bathroom and kitchen renovations, which that was certainly very popular during the global financial crisis, as less people were shifting, and housing affordability was getting less and less affordable to own your own home. That became an incredibly important part of our business in the mid-2000s. Nowadays, as the economy has freed up a little bit, new builds are starting to really move. The big difficulty with that in the Hawke's Bay market is the availability of sections. So we're certainly hoping that the councils jointly make some strong progress towards releasing more sections, or making sure more sections can be released on the market. The other big part of the business at the moment is additions and alterations. So you don't have to shift into a new home if you can extend on what you've already got.
Now, I've got a question to ask you that I've asked a few people on the show, particularly in the last 20 or so episodes. And that's around the current economic cycle when things are doing really well. As a business owner, what do you keep in mind knowing that business cycles change? And how do you protect for the downside or make sure that you're growing at the right pace?
Well, one thing I've learned, having been in this business for 35 odd years, is that we will get a downturn again sometime. It's a matter of when, not if. So it's about being aware of the trends which will indicate a downward cycle. That will mean people will be tighter with their spending. They will be thinking more before they make decisions, particularly around big purchase items. There will also be a move, I guess, to just lost my train of thought now, but that's all right. You can edit it out.
Yeah. So the question around, for business owners, when you've got that shift, in the economy, and it's not a matter of if or when. How do you protect for that downside? What do you put in place now for the 12 months time or 24 months?
It's about making sure the business model is sustainable going forward. So it's very easy for any business to become fat and lazy when times are good. Add more staff than are probably required, spend more capital expenditure than is probably the right thing to do. So it's about right-sizing the business, not only for now, but also for the future. Because one thing is certain, that when the economy tightens again, the business will need to adjust accordingly.
Now, one last question, which is looking into the future. Where would you like to see Mitre 10 Mega as a brand and as a business in the next 5 or 10 years?
I think our growth will continue to come from adding categories and segments to our market. We've still got a lot of space available in the store. We built the boxes bigger than they needed to be in terms of square meterage. So there's an opportunity for us to add extended ranges to the business. So I think we'll become even more of a home improvement store in the future, even more complete by adding different things that we haven't got at the moment.
That's fantastic. Well, I really appreciate your time today, Graeme, and understanding more, not just about the business background, but also the family background, because what you've created here for Hawke's Bay and the jobs you've provided here to 200 plus people around the country is truly inspirational, I think, to weather the downturns and capitalize on the market growth times. Fantastic and well done. I wish you every success in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks, Graeme. Cheers. If you like this episode, remember to subscribe for free on iTunes. Simply search for The Ryan Marketing Show in the iTunes Store.